Not many times. People talk a lot about data to information, information to knowledge, and knowledge to wisdom. I'm sure we all have heard that. You have a very different idea and opinion about it. Okay, and I want you to talk about it. And if you don't mind, you're renowned for your very cynical approaches to concepts. So
you don't have to ask for that; it will happen naturally. Yeah, I mean, my view is anybody who talks about wisdom management should be taken out and garroted for the sake of humanity. Right? I've never liked the model. I mean, it comes from systems thinking.
Systems thinking.
It's actually very difficult to describe. So you can do the data information route, and that makes sense, all right? So if I structure data in such a way that somebody else can understand it, then it's information. So I have a massive transaction, accounting data, that's cool. If I put it into a chart of accounts, then somebody who understands accounting is information.
Right.
However, if somebody doesn't understand accounts, it's still data. So that's a sensible translation. But when people start to talk about knowledge is information which has value, or knowledge is information which leads to action, my view is go and explain that to anybody on a factory floor and you'll be laughed out. Right? Added to which I've got a philosophy degree and I know that's rubbish. Right? So I prefer to see it, two or three things. One is that you can't define knowledge in knowledge management. We've had over 2,000 years in Western history, 3,000 years in Eastern philosophy, and we haven't agreed on a definition of knowledge.
Right.
So the chance a few consultants are going to come up with one is just forget it. Right? But we can talk about what the difference between what it means to manage information and what it means to manage knowledge. And I tend to see knowledge in the context of knowledge management as the means by which we create information from data. So if I have accountancy knowledge, I can create a chart of accounts. If I have shared knowledge, i.e. the person who's receiving the chart of accounts also has accountancy training, then it's information. So knowledge is the way in which we convert data into information, and the function of knowledge management is to create that shared knowledge context so that we inform each other. You can also talk about it, and I often do this in terms of a map and a taxi. If you think about it, a map is information. It actually allows you to navigate your way around a strange city without the need to have a native guide. But the process of abstraction which creates the map means that it's slower for you than if you're with a native. Right? I can take you around London without thinking about it. But if you come to London with an A to Z, you'll have to sit there with a map. You'll have to look at a street name, orientate the street name to the map, make a decision about which way you go, act on that decision. Yeah? So you're constantly, it's called the OODA loop. Yeah? Observe, orientate, decide, act. So what you'll actually be doing is going through that process, and you'll have to keep checking the map. So it'll be much slower.
Right.
On the other hand, if you get a black cab at London Airport and tell him to take you there, the taxi driver has what's called the knowledge. He spent 2 years learning the name of every street in London and over 450 standard routes. So he can just drive you there without thinking about it. So if we talk about managing knowledge and managing information, it's the difference between managing taxi drivers and managing maps. And they both have utility. It takes a lot of time and energy to create taxi drivers, but they're much faster than map users. And the other big problem with maps is that they assume context. And I told a story when I've been here about when I followed a map in New York and didn't realise that there's parts in New York you don't go at 11 o'clock at night, and almost got mugged. And it's not on the map. But everybody who's in New York and knows you don't do that. And the same is in London. I took my mother when she was alive to the opera and realised I walked out a different way from the way I walked back. Because if you live in the city, you know you don't walk down that street after about 7 o'clock at night. And that sort of knowledge is never embedded into information. So the metaphor works for people, and I think you basically say it's data, knowledge, information, forget wisdom. Do you want to use maps, or do you want to use taxi drivers, or what combination? And then it's a lot simpler.
Excellent.